Alrighty, so this week we are talking about some of our composition and what are known as the cardinal rules. There are 3 cardinal rules, and so I've broken this lecture up into 3 parts. So we will talk a little bit about composition and the first cardinal rule, and then you'll have 2 other little mini videos to watch with the other cardinal rules. Alright, so remember some of the things we're going to be talking about today as it relates to these cardinal rules come from things we talked about in the Intro to Forensic Science class, which were the idea of the kinds of photos we need. First, we need to establish our location. Then we need to take the overall pictures showing the big picture. Then we need those mid-range photos, which kind of show the evidence. And then we need those close-up pictures, which actually show the details of what we're looking for. And then from time to time, even the close-up with scale. So the idea here is, again, we have a couple different kinds of photos. Unfortunately, next week, the way the book is laid out and the way the logical progression here works, we'll learn a little bit more about overall mid-range, close-up with scale. But first, we have to actually understand how to compose a picture. So you're going to kind of have a blending here, which you already should have been exposed to these topics before. Now, as it relates to composition, we are not doing art. CSI is not art. I mean, there are some very beautiful pictures we take in CSI, and it is almost like an art form, but it's not art. So when you look at this picture here, this is a very beautiful picture. If you hate the winter, you might not think it's beautiful, but it's a very beautiful picture. We've got this pristine snow, you've got these cool shadows, you got this really nice, birch tree, a couple little evergreens in the background, a little bit of lens flare here, and this is really kind of cool. You look at this and you're just drawn into it. You want to, you'd almost like to be there, except for it's probably really cold. And the reason that this photo draws you in is something that in artistic photography they call the rule of thirds. And the idea here is you take an image and you cut it into thirds across and up down. And what you want is you want your focal points, the points that really make people interested in, to be somewhere in those 1/3 regions of the image. So, think about some of your magazine covers, think about certain photos, paintings, where the person is not, it's not like a portrait where somebody is right there in the middle, like a class photo, but they're over here to the side somewhere, they're over here to the side, and you're kind of getting a lot of extra information, or extra background coming in. That's what makes artistic pictures really cool. We're not doing art. We are trying to show the details. So, CSI we say is not art. And yes, we can take some beautiful pictures in CSI if you're into certain kind of things as being, artistic and beautiful, but our end goal here is not to draw the eye in to something to view as an escapism like artistic is. Our idea is to view in for the details, which then comes into our cardinal rule number 1, fill the frame. And this is for our close-up pictures. We want to fill the frame, make sure that, move my head around there so you can read it, fill the frame for close-ups. And the idea is that when we are in close, we should be able to read stuff. So this is not filling the frame. You have all this grass, you have all this extra stuff here, and it just, you can see it's a gun, but you can't see anything. Now here, we get in close, I can actually read Model 1911 U.S. Armory. So we can actually read some details, and we potentially would get in closer when we talk about macro photography later in the semester. We could actually get in closer and be able to see serial numbers and other things. But as it relates to this image, we just want to show the gun at the crime scene. So we're at the close-up stage at this point, and so we want to see that whole gun. Mid-range pictures, another gun photo. Not like being gun obsessed here, they just make good photos. All right, so here we have pretty good mid-range. It's almost like the rule of thirds. You notice how the gun's kind of in 1/3, that's just kind of happenstance. This is actually a pretty good mid-range because we have an overall picture of this hallway, and the overall picture shows you all the stuff in the hallway. But look at this picture. This picture is really cluttered. You've got this, whatever this is, piece of wood, door, something leaning on something, like something's plugged in here. Is that a space heater? I don't know what that is. I don't know, this edge of a table, you got something here, you got all the carpet, you got the gun. It's too distracting. Think about the jury who's going to be looking at these pictures. We've got the overall pictures which show the whole scene. They show this hallway, they show all these distracting things. We're not focusing on the evidence. Now we're trying to focus on the evidence. So we can show there's the gun, there's the corner, there's the wood trim, you know where this is. And then when you get into the close-up, you see just the gun and the carpet. All right, so the idea here is holding yourself responsible for the background, or conversely, holding yourself responsible for the foreground. When we start dealing with some of these images, you can have extra stuff, so when you've got all that clutter in the hallway, think again about the jury, and the jurors will look at that picture and think that, oh, that space heater or whatever that device plugged into the wall is, that must be something important, because if the cops are showing it in the picture, it's got to be important. If it ain't important, get it out of the picture. Same with the foreground stuff. You got stuff in the foreground. If I'm trying to get a good picture of an object laying here on the ground and there's other stuff around it, you need to start collecting that other stuff. You need to focus in, change how you take your picture, something to not show the other clutter. It's kind of a good example in your book of a young lady laying on the ground. I had the book open to that page. Shoot, give me 1 second here. I had the book open to the page. Oh well. Page 35. Very sorry about that. I wish I knew how to do good video editing. I would have cut that stuff out. But anyway, page 35. Look at you have the one picture. She's filling the frame, but there's like a Pepsi bottle and like a Dixie cup or something in front of her, and a couple of chunks of cardboard. Is that really important? Versus where she's filling the frame and you're seeing the sidewalk and you're seeing some of the grass behind her. Even that bottom picture I don't like as much. I think it should be in tighter. I think the angle should be a little bit better so we can see her facial structures. That's just me. Everybody's got a few different things. But that top picture there where you really are seeing all that other stuff laying on the ground, it's distracting. We have those items in other pictures, but at this time, when you're showing her body, we just want her body. So that's kind of what we need to think about. We need to step closer, we need to step back, we need to come from a different angle if possible. We want to just see things better so that we can fill that frame. All right, now sometimes when we start dealing with some of these images too, we're going to deal with some issues of shadows and lens flares. The textbook covers this pretty well. Ways that you can kind of put your hand up and kind of create some blocking. That you can use a flash. We have a whole chapter about using flashes. Even some ideas of bounce flash, where you can use like a piece of paper and try and get light to bounce off of it. There's a number of different things we can do to try and eliminate these things, but the big reason why we want to, especially when we start getting in these close-ups and we're talking about filling the frame, if you've got a shadow, it obscures stuff and hides stuff, and then it becomes the question, well, what are you hiding? It also causes some of our details to get lost, and when you start dealing with lens flare, you end up where you start losing some of the highlights, and you start losing things again too, where you just can't make things out. And so a good jury, we got to kind of put ourselves in the mind of the attorneys who are going to put us on the stand and be asking us questions about these pictures, and the good attorneys are going to be asking these questions, and the good jury members are going to be saying, well, yeah, what could be in that shadow? Yeah, what is in that spot there that's all washed out because of all that lens flare? What could be hidden there that the cop wanted to obscure so that it would prove this client innocent? So we always kind of want to wear that hat where we're assuming what the defense's strategy is going to be, and the better photography we have that truly shows everything in a true and accurate form, then we don't open ourselves up to those questions. All right, so that's the end of part one. As always, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to give me a phone call or shoot me an email or post up here on Blackboard in the Ask LaFave. Otherwise, we've got part two, which is our second cardinal rule, and part three coming up next.